Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. I see people are just starting to log in, and I just want to give it just a minute to allow everyone to get settled in and to log in. Sorry, so distracted. But as you guys are logging in, I would love for you to let us know where you're calling in from. I am always interested to see how far and wide our community goes out, and it's always just interesting to find that kind of information. But I'll start. Just going to let you know that I'm calling in from the United States in a little small state called New Jersey. For those of you are not familiar, actually, we have a lot of famous people that come out of New Jersey. Bruce Springsteen, if you're from my generation, Frank Sinatra, or if I'm not hitting any of that, you know, the Joe Bros are from the New Jersey state as well. For you millennials and Gen Zers out there, or anybody. But I just love to see where everybody's calling in from. Florida, Tennessee, let's see, Florida, Portugal. Wow. I love it when I see that it goes out across the world and our community is really spread out and diverse. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. As you're getting in, if you haven't heard from me yet, please let us know where you're calling in from in the chat. So before we get started, I will introduce myself. My name is Kim Heyer. I'm with GP Strategies. I'm just your host and producer for today's session on ContentFlex, a program showcase where we're going to go over the ContentFlex solution that we have. Before we get started, also, I want to let everybody know that we are going to be sending out a recording of today's session and a link to our deck within 24 hours. Look in your inbox. It is going to be coming from myself directly. And also, I just want to know that even though everyone's lines are muted, we always want this session to be as interactive as possible. So we do have the chat feature open. So please feel free to converse with other attendees as well as presenters and our guests that are on today's session. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us. And at this time, I am going to introduce our presenters for today. So Lisa Fagan, she's the Vice President of GP Strategies and focuses on providing clients with leadership development, employee engagement, coaching, and mentoring solutions. She has built and deployed growth strategies, managed global and national sales teams, designed and executed alliance programs. She holds a bachelor's degree in marketing communication from Florida Southern College. And we also have Nic Girvan. She currently serves as the Director of Learning and Delivery for GP Strategies DEI, with an impressive global track record spanning over 2 decades in learning and organizational development. She skillfully merges her deep knowledge of adult learning, theory, and general psychology to draft groundbreaking and inspirational interventions geared towards fostering cultural shifts and transforming working environments. I know that you have a great session planned for today. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Kim. And hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you here today. We have lots that we want to share with you. So I'm going to dive right in by giving you some background on our guest today. Really are experts that we've brought to share with you today, their perspectives from their disciplines, their history in terms of what leveraging a content library can and could do for your organization. So let me tell you a little bit about our guests. So Matt Donovan, who is a GP Strategies Chief Learning Innovation Officer, has really dedicated his career to looking for most effective means, innovative means, most engaging means for learning. So he looks at things from the purview of the learner and really advises us from a GP perspective on what are those methods of effective learning and innovative ways that we can bring learning to our clients. So excited to have his insights to share with you today as we talk about ContentFlex. Karie Willyerd has dedicated her career more on the what I'll refer to as the client side, where Matt was really working majority of the time in supplier organizations to clients. Karie has spent her side on the client side of the table, and she has just a phenomenal background as Chief Learning Officer for the likes of Visa, SAP, and Sun Microsystems. So she's going to bring expertise from the perspective of what does good look like in terms of learning strategy. And she brings that experience and expertise to this conversation. So super honored to have you both with us and looking forward to your perspectives when we come on to that. So Kim, if we could go to the agenda slide for just a moment, I'll briefly highlight for you how they're going to flow through this conversation. So, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are for those of you that don't know about GP strategy. So I'll just spend a minute there. Then I'll ask my partner, Nic, to share with you what is ContentFlex. That's the what part of this conversation today. And then we'll shift to talking with Karie and Matt about, so if ContentFlex is the what, let's talk about the why and how it can be helpful to you. So we'll leverage their expertise there and would love to have your questions as we go. So I'll facilitate that aspect of the conversation. So that is our agenda for today. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right. 2 minutes on who we are and why you should be listening to GP Strategies. GP Strategies is essentially an organization that has grown over the years through acquiring established learning organizations. So years forward from when GP Strategies began, we are now an organization that can serve any learning need that any organization has. On one side of the house, we have supportive services that we can provide to companies. On another side of the house, we have the ability to design and build bespoke training. And on my side of the house, the Nic's side of the house, we represent the content side of the organization. So we have deep content that we can bring to our clients, both from a DE&I and a leadership perspective. So that deep expertise is what you'll hear about today. You'll also hear about the extensive content. And just also know that not only do we bring you that content, and we're going to talk about that, we have the ability to deploy it, to deliver it to our clients globally. So anywhere, anything, anyhow you want to receive the content is essentially how we can serve you. So if we could go to the next slide, let me tell you just a minute or a little bit about what fuels our content. So what makes our content special? What makes us able to bring to you some really innovative content? And it is these 4 things. So proprietary research for us doesn't mean the exhaustive studies that you see some organizations conduct that take 2 years to pull together, and that by the time the content comes, the report comes out, it's really not as relevant as it was when they started the journey of doing the research. We do pulsing, so we do it with some more frequency. And the reason we do that is because what we found is that today's marketplace is changing so rapidly that we have to do rapid pulse-like research studies so that we can stay on top of what's current and relevant for leaders and employees in the organization today. So we use that research to inform what we do in the way of updates and building new content for our clients. Thought leadership for us isn't just sharing with you our point of view and the results of all of the research that we do. It's also about talking to and working with strategic partners who have strong points of view and expertise in their own right. So we bring them to the conversation. We bring them to relationships with GP strategies that enable us to build content that isn't just insular from our point of view. It leverages expertise from other areas. So that's what thought leadership means to us. And you are welcome to join us in any of our thought leadership webinars that tell you a lot more about how we build those partnerships and the different points of view that we bring to our clients and to the marketplace. The third thing that fuels the development of our content is the industry relationships that we have. So we maintain relationships with the likes of ATD and training industry so we can keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening industry-wide. So that also can inform the development of our products. And lastly, but most importantly, is what you tell us. What are our clients saying about their needs, what are they saying about our content? And we take that feedback and it drives what we do to update, maintain, and build new. So these are the things that we leverage in order to build the content, the award-winning content that we're going to tell you more about today. And with that, I would love to hand over to my partner, Nic.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lisa. So after hearing all of those great reasons why to connect with GP, it's time to really explore what ContentFlex is and all the wonderful opportunities that it can bring you at scale. So let's dive in with the first slide. Can we just move? Thank you very much. So as Lisa's already alluded to, when it comes to leadership and DEI training experiences, we are so incredibly proud about our award-winning offerings. For years, we've offered training products off the shelf, customized and completely bespoke. As Lisa says, we're going to continue doing that. But we recognize that for diverse organizations, off the shelf isn't always the right option, and custom and bespoke designs aren't always budget friendly. So ContentFlex is our way of sharing our thought leadership and design expertise in an affordable, flexible, and scalable way. We've got over 70 modules across instructor-led sessions and digital learning experiences that you can subscribe to and then roll out in-house. When you subscribe to our courses, you get our presentations, you get our trainer notes, you get the implementation guides, the learning paths, everything that you need to run our content yourselves. So that means that you're saving on those instructional designers, our facilitators, our project managers. For just that one subscription cost, you and your internal SMEs can just run our content again and again. Now, value for money for us is really important, and we know it's important for you too. So we're not suggesting that you subscribe to endless amount of courses that don't fit with your strategy. It's all about being flexible. So what we're doing is we're proposing 3 different ways in which that you can subscribe to our content. Now, I'm going to go into these in greater detail in a moment, but let me just give you a bit of an overhead in terms of what they are. We start with our focused. Now, our focused solution is built from the courses that we think just bundle together beautifully. The ones that enhance your learning, you can layer them on top and you've got that full learning path. So for organizations who know what they want to tackle, but are a little bit overwhelmed when it comes to that full learning pathway, I'd say dive straight in, check out our focused offerings. If, however, your organization has already started its journey, you've got some amazing training opportunities already in place, but you've got a few gaps, that's where our flexible comes in, because you can select what's relevant to you, use our expertise to prop up the organizational gaps that you may be experiencing. Or for those of you that are like kids in candy shops, you want to go hard on your DEI and your leadership journeys, not a problem. We can do that with you as well. You can subscribe to the full catalogue. But let me tell you, you are going to be busy all year because that is a lot of content. So our ContentFlex approach, it puts you in the driving seat. But don't worry, because all of the experience, all of the support and the service that you're used to with GP, that carries on. Because just because you're subscribing to these courses doesn't mean we're just going to leave you to it and off you go. We're going to be your co-pilots. So if partway through you think, actually, I need a bit more customization, I need some consultancy, or actually I'd like you to come in and deliver these courses, you can add that on. It's not a case of you're subscribing and off you go, you're into the wilderness. We're going to be there all throughout your subscription period. So effectively, ContentFlex is subscribing to our courses, getting our material, and then delivering it and running with it as many times as you need without that additional cost. But let's talk about the additional benefits that you're going to experience with our ContentFlex subscription. If we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So when it comes to benefits, I think we break it down into 3 key areas, because ContentFlex is breaking the mold on how GP has traditionally done business. We know that the world around us has changed, and quite frankly, we know your budget has too. So you need to do more with less. ContentFlex isn't just keeping your CFO happy, it's also working with your CLOs, your HRDs, and really embracing your learning and development teams. So if we're going to start with these benefits, I'm going to talk about our expertise. Because let's be honest, your internal training teams are going to be drowning in demand right now. They want to be delivering content that really makes a difference, but they don't always have the expertise, the contacts, or the time and design skills to develop an intensive catalogue of products. That's where we come in. You aren't just subscribing to our course content, you're subscribing to our thought leadership, the design expertise, the subject matter experts, and it's all of that ability to create transformational learning. So on top of our content now, you're also going to get our content maintenance, all of those updates. The world changes all the time. So it's recognizing that you're going to have that singular source that is going to be providing you and equipping your learning teams to run throughout the year so they can do what's best for them and best for the organization. If we then move to the people factor, this one is my absolute favorite because bringing in external facilitators can be inspiring to internal teams. They can see different styles, learn new content, change and adapt to their style. But this is all intrinsic motivation. It's not effective in terms of the people development pathway. If you're getting ContentFlex, what you're also getting is the universal certification. So we're going to upskill your trainers. We're going to equip them with the resources, and then we're going to let them fly. It's not about us coming in as a trusted partner and saying about your leadership and DEI journeys. It's about your staff owning it. They're going to be the face of it. They're going to be the drive of it, making it so much more authentic than ever before. So it's about the quality. It's about your people development. But the other part of this triad that we've got is, of course, the scalable efficiency in terms of the savings and the reach. So ContentFlex, let's be honest, it's about competitive pricing and affordable investment. We're not going to be charging you for every session delivered. Your internal team can run this course all day, all night without additional charge. So for you large organizations, this is completely scalable. The majority of the content can be provided in a virtual format as well as a face-to-face physical one, which means that you can roll out these courses without having to pay the additional costs of venues and travel expenses and accommodation. You just need that subscription fee. But going back to you large organizations, I also recognize that to do that global rollout, it may require a little bit of that extra investment because you may need translations or localization. And again, you can add that on. Just speak to our account managers and they will support you through that. So I hope by now you're starting to get excited about what this ContentFlex initiative is and how it's going to work. But one of the facts that I haven't spoken about from this slide is, of course, the flexibility in ContentFlex. So let's look at the 3 subscription models and talk about how they flex to you. So first off, let's dive into our next slide, which is going to be our focused. So our focused, like I mentioned before, if you know what you want to cover, you're not really sure about how it all comes about, but you've got a rough idea, then pick the topic that works for you. Because our focused solutions are a collection of courses. Some are about 6 courses, some are up to 8 courses, but they're all relevant based on the topic that you choose. So whether it's leadership, whether it's DEI, whether it's personal development, we have handpicked the best courses that complement with each other. So you get the opportunity to have that full learning pathway, and don't worry, we'll help you in terms of how you're going to roll that out and the priority in which it goes. But you've got that security knowing your learning is going to be layered. We aren't talking one-off events and people forget. We talk about that constant embedding across instructor-led and digital solutions as well. So that's our focused. If we move on to our flexible, so our flexible is the one that I said, you know, you've got brilliant training, you've got your learning paths, but you may have a few gaps. We're handing you the basket. This is where you can browse our catalogue of 70 different offerings and select the ones that are relevant to you for up to 20 different courses. And you don't need to select all instructor-led or all digital. You blend them across for what is relevant to you. It's all about filling in those gaps. So get excited and fill your baskets with the flexible solution. Now, of course, like I said, some of us are just far too excitable. I'm always guilty of that fact. So moving on to our final subscription, and this is the full model. This is where you get absolutely everything. The beauty of this is you've got our instructor-led courses, which can start at about 2 hours up to a full day. You've got our digital solutions, and I'm not talking, your standard and your tired click and reads of, up to an hour long. I'm talking about relevant learning methodology that starts at 90 seconds for our behavioural nudges. We've got our micro learning. So your point of need catalogue is absolutely bursting with inspiring content that embeds our instructor-led courses. Like I said earlier, we're not talking one and done, we're talking your full journey. So when you're buying our full catalogue, you can roll out all your different topics at all your different levels, all at the same time. It's not going to cost you any more. It is going to keep you busy, and it is going to inspire your organisation. So they're the different approaches.
Go ahead.
So I've talked quite a lot in terms of what it is, what the benefits are, and how it's going to break out. But let's see what this actually looks like. I'm about to overwhelm you with a lot of courses. Here we go. They're all on the screen right now. And for those of you scribbling or frantically trying to read, don't panic. This is coming out to you in a moment. You will have it. You can refer back. But I want you to get excited about what you're seeing, because as you can see, there's a huge selection. In the middle, we've got our employee and leader development packages in the center. Around the edge, we've got our complementary topics like career development, employee engagement, coaching. As I've said, we've got a mix of instructor-led and digital. And if you look into the mapping of this, you can see that there's black font with filled in bullets. That's your leadership. And your DEI is in blue font, or it's in outlined bullets. So you can have at a glance how that splits, because what we believe is so important is that you can't separate DEI and leadership in a pathway. They complement each other so perfectly. And that's why we want you to be thinking on both radars, pulling together that ultimate experience. This slide is intense. We're not talking about just looking at this today. We want to bring it to life. We want you to reflect on what you've seen, but more importantly, we want you to take away what you're hearing. Today is starting that conversation. And at that point, Lisa, I'm going to hand over to you so that you can carry on the conversation with our industry brains, Matt and Karie.
Great. Thank you so much, Nic. Hard not to get excited when Nic is talking. She's just got such infectious enthusiasm. So yeah, please go ahead and pop your questions into the chat. A couple things that I do want to just straight away touch on that are questions that are surfacing is this is really tough because everybody sort of has their own lingo, and that is defining what we mean by digital versus other modalities of deployment, right? So let me just clear that up for everyone right now. Instructor-led is instructor-led, face-to-face, right? When we talk about VILTs for GP strategies, that does mean some form of Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams delivery. All right. And so for us, when we do that delivery, that does involve a moderator, a platform, and a facilitator, along with content that's delivered electronically. Feels a lot like instructor-led face-to-face, but it's just done virtually. Now, we also have webinars. We also have digital. So let me explain. Webinars are pretty self-explanatory. That's very much like this experience that you're seeing here, but to the masses, right? So you don't have as much in terms of size restriction when you're doing a webinar. So we tend to do more awareness-based type learning, and that is also part of the package, is a series of pre-recorded webinars. Digital, that's where it gets a little tricky, because we define digital as a combination of some of the nudges that Nic was referring to, that are these assets that can sit on a platform or in a portal that you can access without the support of any facilitation, no guided experience there, okay? We also have digital experiences that are guided, that are cohort-based, that integrate live elements in the experience on an LXP. So just be aware those are all those modalities we serve, we offer through the ContentFlex package. Okay, so just wanted to clear that question up right out of the gate. Now let me turn to our experts, Karie and Matt. Matt, if I could start with you. One of the things that is an ongoing debate ever since I started in the industry is, what's better, to build, to buy, to borrow, and what are the benefits, pros and cons of any of those? When you think about what we're talking about with ContentFlex, what's your perspective on the build versus buy versus borrow debate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets back to what we're expecting out of our learning journeys, experiences, academies, whatever that we're trying to do. And we're really trying to get to a deeper journey that's going to follow the learners all the way through it. And so the more we can actually put in as it meets a range of moments of need, it's really trying to be that ruthlessly relevant piece. It increases the demand for the amount of content that's put out there in a variety of formats to be available at a first moment or a third moment, or when something goes wrong or changes. So being able to have a full experience out there, you need to be able to build more content. That's where that kind of strategy comes in. And we've adopted a 5B strategy for us, which includes that kind of buy, build, borrow, bend going into that. So the old assumption of having to build everything from scratch just isn't supportable. It's not really enabled out there. So to be able to actually get the content that's out there, that when they need it, how they need it, we have to look at a combination of strategies. So it's an and conversation, not an or, to really bring that to the table. So it allows you to do it. I use an example of being able to, think of our content offerings in layers of relevance. And so, like the first layer. So if I was talking about creating just like a business acumen course, for example, I talk about, I will go in and say, what is a financial statement? What is a balance sheet? So understanding financial statements is part of business acumen. There's a ton of content that already will tell me what is an income statement, what is a balance sheet, and what are the fundamentals of business acumen. They're available out there. They can be generated, purchased, borrowed, and pulled. And these are the things you're finding actually in this ContentFlex package, which frees us up. It says, instead of taking time to build things that are already available or out there, I look at the second layer, which gets into how do you read our income statement at our company, for example. And that next layer of relevance talks about how do we apply it. And those things aren't readily available. So as a designer and developer, I'm going to spend more of my time trying to get the things that aren't readily available and say that's where I bring in the other pieces of content to be able to do that. So it's an and conversation and trying to drive deeper into that. That experience to get into that true application, ruthlessly relevant experience. So, and that's the ContentFlex option really allows you to get a good leg up with a good base of content in the foundation.
Great. Thank you for that, Matt. There is a question that popped into the chat. I'm going to address that, and then I'd like to come over to you, Karie. The question is, are digital materials downloadable, only accessible through the platform? So it's both, depending on what you're purchasing from us and how you're wanting to engage. So a lot of our clients will typically want to access and have it available on, say, an LMS or an LXP that they have in their organization, and we might build a bridge from their system to our system, or we might upload some assets. It really just depends on the solution that's selected. So, but both are possible, to answer the question. So thank you for that question. I think it was from Desiree. Karie, let me come over to you if I can. So you just talked about this, Matt referred to it as the 5Bs, but this whole idea of being able to leverage content and having that base. From a CLO's perspective, what do you think the benefits are to being able to leverage a content library from a subscription point of view?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things, because I think, as you know, I leveraged this while I was at Visa in a prior version of it. So in addition to Matt's comments about how you can flexibly weave specific aspects of content into your own journeys, I think the other thing is, when you're a CLO, you're responsible for global training frequently. And so it gives you this opportunity to be able to purchase essentially the rights to a program and so on. And if you have instructors that are in Germany. You can have those instructors use the materials and personalize them, or if you need it taught in South Africa and you don't have instructors in South Africa, you can leverage the GP instructors, but it still lets you get a common language around a particular topic globally, which can be very few organizations have facilitators around the world. So it gives you an opportunity to be flexible on your facilitation delivery methods and so on as well, which I find really interesting. I also like that there's enough options in the content and the way that we're packaging this to be able to not have to buy more than you need. So I find that very appealing from a budget perspective, because sometimes people come at you with this vast library and really you only need, a very few things in it, and then you're kind of stuck with more than you need. So I like the flexible packaging of the content and replaceability. So those are both really appealing to me.
Thank you, Karie. And let me just stay with you for a moment and ask you again, from that CLO's point of view, since you established that, you can see the benefit of leveraging a content library, and you've just talked about, some of the benefits that you would see in an organization were you still in the CLO role. What would you want to see from a supplier? I mean, what kind of work criteria would you use to determine who you want to work with? I heard you say one, which was, hey, I like this idea of flexibility and not being forced to take more content than I need. What other things might you be looking for from a supplier or a partner?
Well, for sure, great content and well-researched content. So that would be probably the number one thing. I mean, it doesn't matter what a bargain it is if it's not great. And so and of course, you've talked about some of the research that goes into some of this content. So that would be number one. I think number two, that it's been developed in a way that is globally sensitive and globally applicable. There's so many programs that are out there that, people in the US, for example, have developed them, and they're using US terms and slang and examples and so on. And so, something that's got, when you work for a global company, something that's going to be usable globally. Yeah, probably the two biggest things I'd be looking for.
Great, thank you for that. And Matt, let me bring the same question to you, but with a little twist, if I may. So when you think about effectiveness of the learning experience, right, and how consumable it is, and can it be ported over on multiple modalities, all of the things that you take into consideration in your role, what kinds of things would you want to see from a partner relative to licensing content?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this has been something we've been working on, but we do want to look at the flexibility and the structuring, a range of modalities, the open architecture to be able to understand how it was designed originally, the ability to kind of break it apart into pieces so we can add, so imagine like being able to create a mosaic. So as we're creating a full learning journey, I want to be able to take pieces of the content and rearrange those in a tiling structure, and then add that grout, which is the relevance, the context, the application, the unique elements in our and the business experience for the company or whatever. That's what we want to route. So we want to be able to have them in usable, consumable pieces that they can be kind of reconfigured to meet our unique needs to be able to do that. So sometimes the packages come in so locked in tight, so impenetrable, it's really hard to break them apart. So these are the things we want to be able to do with it, and a good strategy downstream to say, hey, there was a great piece in here, but we added something into it. So, I mean, for example, I know that, not all organizations use the same coaching model, for example. And I want to be able to say, for example, this organization uses the SCARF model instead of a different one. Well, can I still use the leadership components, bring in the SCARF model, and it's enough handholds or footholds that I can actually integrate those pieces easily so it looks like it came together and with intentionality. It wasn't so locked in that we're only tied to this version of the coaching model. So that's an example of where that flexibility comes in.
Thank you, Matt. There's a question that's come into the chat, so a good one. And again, I may ask Matt and Karie for your perspectives on this. So let me start first with the question. It's coming in from Samantha. How often do you update the content? And Samantha's sharing that we sometimes run into issues with buying something that then doesn't get updated, or the content isn't exactly the same, so that they don't end up using it. In a nutshell, is this a one-year solution or multi-year solution for DE&I training? So perfectly upfront with you, Samantha. In the past, we've learned some lessons here. We've engaged with clients in a really long-standing contract and realized from their feedback and from our own experience that, goodness, we didn't think through the updating aspect of this, the maintenance aspect of this. And so this was about 4 years ago that we initially had thoughts about licensing content, and we learned that hard lesson. So you're right. And that's something that you've got to take into consideration. So our licenses now are 1 year with that issue in mind. So we're doing 12 months to 18 months. And it really depends on our customers. Sometimes, that additional time frame allows them a bit of onboarding time to get their staff prepared, the certification if they choose to do that, and maybe some tailoring time. So then they have 12 months to deploy. So 12 to 18 months is what we're looking at. Now, how often do we update our content? That is largely dependent on two things. One, feedback that we're receiving. We remember the 4 things I covered earlier. The feedback we're receiving from clients to say, this is a burning need. We need you to make sure that your content is up to snuff with what's happening in the marketplace and with organizations today. So example of that might be right now, we've heard a lot of need around career development. For whatever reason, coming off of COVID, I think it's some generational issues. It's turnover in the organization, but our clients are telling us we need help with having those career conversations with our employees. Our leaders need help with it, and our employees need to be better prepared for those conversations. So that's been a burning need, and we poured in investment into updating that content to suit current circumstances in organizations. That's an example, Samantha. Our research, when we do our pulsing research, if other themes surface in that research around either new dynamics that employees and leaders are dealing with, or just nuances that are different relative to evergreen type skills, but they're being applied differently, then we'll update our content that way. So yes, we update regularly, but it's not, we don't take all 70 titles and do an update every year. That would be not truthful to share with you. So when I look at Karie and Matt on this issue of maintenance and updating, how important, Karie, from a CLO's perspective, if you think of Samantha's question, how important is it to have those updates with regularity when you're deploying your strategy? And maybe how have you addressed that in the past with your partners?
It's the content area is what really matters. And I think we've, so for example, if we were doing, if one of these courses was, and it's not, but if one of them was generative AI, we would need it updated monthly. Right. So that's not one of the courses in this. And so there are many of these courses which have a longer life because the underlying research and knowledge base is not going to turn over. And so then what you're trying to do is make sure that it's still contextually relevant and still culturally relevant, or that new research is added in. So I think of those kinds of courses, even when we were developing them inside a company, when you're developing a course, you're kind of hoping for a 3-year lifespan on content without too much of a refresh on many of these areas. And frequently that's just if you're using video and people are wearing bell-bottom jeans from the 70s, you've got a clue it hasn't been updated in a while. So, but there is emerging research in DE&I, and so that's one of the areas that it's really important to keep up. And so again, I think it's down to the content area and what's emerging in new knowledge in the space.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. And Matt, bringing again with a twist on that same question, when you think of technology and how it can be leveraged, and you think about tailoring content. So one of the challenges with maintenance of content once it's been acquired by an organization, if they've tailored it, how do they continually update that? And are there any solutions out there in the marketplace today that can help with this challenge?
Well, and again, I think one of the things that helps with the shelf life is that, you're not just thinking about black and white, all content's the same. So, and Karie alluded to this already. So for example, I know the X model in terms of engagement is a core component of this curriculum. And I think that model and the way it talks has a very solid shelf life. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are refreshes with some of the imagery, but the concept and the research behind it is very solid with it. Where I would look at continuously updating is what we see is our environments are constantly changing. So how am I applying the X model to be able to respond to the environment? How am I helping get up that layers of relevance into not only, how do we apply it here, but how do I use it to solve a problem, and being able to add those things in. So I look for ways that are more natural to refresh, update, and expand that keeps the overall portfolio very rich and fresh feeling. We don't need to reinvent some of these core models every year. That just doesn't make a lot of sense, because you want to get good at practicing them. So you look at, I want to keep the model more solid, more stable. We're going to implement it. We're going to continue to work with it. We're going to get better with it. So stability and parts of it are really important. And then newer, fresher ideas help kind of build off that full curriculum and the feel behind that. So again, it's not about thinking of it as one black and white, all content's equal. I think it's all about being able to connect with them. And then how and when people use that, I think that'll be the other way, is how you design the types of experiences that reach into when I need it for me for a certain type of thing, or I'm trying to address something, how can I find those pieces? But that means being able to build them out in that way. So I may need something going very differently when something went wrong, like I'm having a really difficult engagement challenge that I'm facing. I'm probably very familiar with the model, but what I now need to see are how are other people solving that kind of a challenge. I can use these pieces to help reinforce and build those things that can be found at that moment. So there's a variety of ways. It opens up, I think, the ways in which you can combine and recombine to add more relevance, more context, etc. Yeah,
and one strategy that we continue to use to address this issue of keeping things fresh and updated is the facilitation aspect of it. So as you pointed out, Matt, and you said it as well, Karie, there's some elements of content that are evergreen that don't necessarily need to be refreshed in and of themselves, but how you talk about them, how you deliver it in the classroom needs to be relevant to current times and current business issues. So you can come at it that way as well, to say, let me just focus in on my facilitators and how they're bringing this to life, as opposed to a full modification of the content itself. Okay, so we are coming up on time, and I would love to keep this conversation going for the rest of the day. Matt and Karie would kill me, but so would the rest of you probably, but we are coming up on time. So I'm going to need to hand back over to Kim, who has done such an amazing job of orchestrating this meeting for us today. I want to thank everyone from my perspective, particularly Karie and Matt, for taking your time to share your insights with us. My partner, Nic, and all of you who've taken the time to join us today. Kim, any final closing comments that you want to share with our audience?
Well, again, I just want to thank all of you for taking your time out to present this information. And of course, everybody who joined us today. It was a great discussion. A big thank you for your time and attention. At the end of this session, we do ask if you take a minute to fill out our survey and give us some feedback on our webinar for today. I hope you'll join us for another webinar upcoming. Go to our website, gpstrategies.com/webinars, and make sure you attend some of our upcoming. And I want to wish all of you a wonderful and productive rest of your day. Thank you again. See you soon.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.